Hey, welcome back. I'm Lisa with Candles by Sincerely Ice Blue. If you're new here on this channel, we talk about the business of making and selling candles and just everything that comes in the business of candle making and starting your own small business. And there's a lot. There is a lot. There is more than I ever thought possible with starting a small business, especially candles. I didn't realize how hard it could be. A few weeks ago, I started chatting with you about making candles using the American Freedom Wax, the Soy Organics Freedom Wax. And I have to say, I feel like I haven't done anything for the month of October because my life got insanely busy from family things and going to Cleveland and stuff with my daughter and testing. And my husband has a Etsy store selling stuff that he does with his Cricut. And he's selling all kinds of stuff. And I don't even have an Etsy store. I don't even have an Etsy store started yet. And I'm a little jealous and I'm a little bummed out. I feel like I am farther behind than I should be. But the reality is research and development and testing takes a lot more work than doing what he's doing. And that's designing on the Cricut. And then he does testing, but most of his tests just work beautifully. So anyway, today is part 2 of the rest of my results in regards to the American Freedom Wax. So let's take a look at where we're at. And I'm going to disclaimer you that I am going to be reading some notes because I want to be able to give you all the info that I have gathered so far. Okay, so one of the candles that I started working with is a very popular vessel that many of us use, and that's the square jar from the Dollar Tree. And I absolutely love this vessel, and I absolutely am very angry with this vessel because it is just not easy to wick. I think I might have figured out what's gonna work for me though. So this guy here, we use the American Soy, the Freedom Wax, and we have tried everything from 6% to 12% on the fragrance oil. And I don't think I've totally got that figured out yet. We started with this one on series 2. I am now on my 3rd time re-wicking this guy. So I started out with a CD18 because I wanted to give just one wick one more try. And it did burn too hot. It had a lot of carbon. It was smoking, but it still tunneled. So obviously, even with a larger wick, this guy has to be double wicked. And so then we tried a Eco 14 because I wasn't quite convinced yet that I should go with double wicking. And it was a no-go from the get-go. It drowned and tunneled immediately. And so I re-wicked it again. And this time I put in 2 CDN4s. And you can see it does have a little bit of tunneling, but I think that's because if I turn it like this, you can probably see that I did not get those 2 wicks centered well enough down the diagonal. It should be a little bit, if I'm holding it this way, to the left, and that's the side that's tunneling. I think it's too far to the right. Well, I had it burning in my guest bathroom, and it has burned a total of 21 hours. It does have a little bit of that tunneling like I showed you, but it has a great cold throw still, and it does give off a nice hot throw. It's not as strong as I would like it to be, but now that it seems that this wick is working well, I'm either going to try again with a step up and maybe go to a CDN 6. And right now I have the fragrance at 8%. So I'm probably going to bump that up because what I have found is working with the Freedom Wax, I have to do a little stronger on the percentage because it's soy. So I think the CDN Wick's going to work well. .com, they have something called the Wickinator 3000, I think it is. And I can go in there and I can tell it what wax I'm using and the diameter of your jar, and it'll recommend 2 different wicks for you to try. So this came up on there, but I think I'm going to try and wick it up one just because I can. Okay, so the next jar I have is one of my favorites as well. I like to call it my blue cobalt jar. It's 3 1/8 inch in diameter. So the first thing I started with on this was also a CD18, and it was way too hot, way too hot. The melt pool was too deep, but it still had a slight, it had a deep melt pool, but it was still tunneling, which I was not very fond of. So after about 2 burns, I decided to re-wick it, and I went with an Eco 14. And the Eco 14 was not wonderful. I ended up having to re-wick it again. It had absolutely no hot throw, even though it was a decent burn. That could be because, again, I went with the 8% on this. All these candles are at 8%. So I decided to try and double wick it. And I did the same as I did on the square one we just saw. So I did 2 CDN 4s, and you can see that it was burning beautifully. So after I double wicked it, I felt like the first 2 burns were burning too hot. But at that point, I was just a little frustrated and didn't want to re-wick it again. So I kept burning it. And I have burned it 3 more times since then. And the hot throw improved tremendously. And the burn, as you saw, and I'll show it to you again, it's very even. It's very smooth. There's no sooting. There's no carbon balls. And it's really been performing really well. So I'm going to keep burning this just to see where we end up. But so far, I'm very happy with that. And one of the things you'll see if you are on the soybeads.com website is that they do recommend working with CDN wicks or Eco Series wicks with the Freedom Wax. So that's kind of where I've been trying to focus. I started out with the CD wicks before I talked to them about all of this. So the next jar is a blue tapered jar, which I've gotten off of Amazon. So some of you may also be using this jar. Now, it's about a 3-inch wide at the top, but it's tapered. So it gets narrower as it goes down, which we already know it's going to burn hotter. But because it's tapered, it's really going to burn hotter. I started this one with a CD18 in my office, and it had a huge carbon ball. It was burning far too hot. The melt pool got far too deep, far too quickly. So I re-wicked it after the very first burn. I just let it cool for a day and re-wicked it because it was obvious that that was the wrong wick for it. And I put in an Eco 14, and it started out with a slight tunnel, but it does have a good hot throw. So I made myself a note that to keep an eye on it, should I try maybe wicking it up, keeping in mind not to re-wick it right away because we know it's going to burn hotter as it goes. So we have burned it about 7 times since, and you'll see that there's no tunneling. The top is fairly smooth. Now the wick does have a little bit of a carbon ball on it, but the melt pool's not been too deep. It's not been burning too hot. So I'm really pleased with how this one has been working so far. Okay, so this next jar has been a problem child. And I know it's a very common jar that most of us start out with because it's a great price and it's easy to get, and it's from Amazon. It's a 9-ounce straight-sided jar. It holds, it says it's 9 ounces, but it holds 7 ounces up to the shoulder here. And it comes with like a little metal lid and a little plastic lid. So this is about 2.5 inches diameter. So I've tried a couple different wicks, and I had tried the Premier wicks. I tried the CD series of wicks. I tried a wood wick, and I realized that with the soy, none of those were working well. So I did try an Eco 8. and it went in the guest bath and it was drowning and tunneling. So the Eco 8 was burning too hot. So keeping in mind that Eco 8 is not the same as a CD 8. It's not the same size. It's just the way they number their wicks. So I did it with a CD 8 and put it back in the guest bath, and it had a very slight tunnel. I had a good hot throw, but a slight carbon ball. And I made myself a note to maybe wick it up after another burn. And I was not smelling a hot throw, but my husband went in the guest bathroom and he's like, ooh, that smells nice. I'm like, I don't smell it. So keep in mind that you may not smell it because your nose has gotten accustomed to it. And he's a good judge because frankly, he doesn't have a good smeller to begin with. So he smells it. I know it's got to have a good hot throw. So this has burned almost 30 hours since I have rewicked it. And you wouldn't believe that this little guy gets so much burn time, but he does. And it's got a beautiful burn. And the wick it's self-trimming, so you can see it just has that tiny little curl. I haven't had to trim off too much of a carbon ball. Now it does seem to be leaving, see how that residue, it's not like a tunnel, but it's not burning all the wax off of the walls. So again, we know this is going to burn hotter as it gets lower. So I'm going to stick with it, but pretty confident that this wick has been working well. Okay, so the very last one that I've been working on and struggling with was my autumn tins. And I've actually found 2 different ones that work really, really well. So it's a 6.5 ounce tin. Now this again might be a common tin. I also purchased them off of Amazon. And what I have found with these little guys is I started out with a CD18. Thought I'd give it 1 wick because it's 3 3/8 inch. And I was going by the anything under 4, you probably shouldn't double wick, but it did not work well at all. And so I reached out to the Soybeads team for help, and they recommended going with either the Eco Series wicks or the CDN wicks. And by the way, with the one CD18, it had a super tunnel and 0 hot throw, no hot throw at all. But the cold throw on these has been fantastic. If you are using any of the autumn scents, the pumpkin spice, I can't remember all the scents that we used. Oh, the wild berry cheesecake. Oh my gosh, it is such a strong cold throw and hot throw with these tins. And we only did it at 8%, by the way, so keeping that in mind. So we rewicked it with 2 Eco 6s and burnt it out completely. The hot throw was just delightful. So the burn time on this one is about 35 hours. So I highly recommend in these using the 2x Eco 6s. That works out well. The other ones that seem to work well in those tins was we did 2x Eco 10. So the first ones were Eco 6 and Eco 10s. The Eco 10s burned hot, but not too hot. And even when it burnt down, it just burned through it quicker. So I think I'm going to stick with the Eco 6s. So we did find, if you're somebody that would prefer to use 1 wick, we did find a 1 wick solution that worked well as well. A CD26 wick. And it had, again, it also had just an amazing hot throw and a good, strong, solid cold throw. And when I say the cold throw on it coming from these tins was strong, I mean even with the lids on and I had them in a box, as soon as you open the box, you can smell the cold throw. You don't even have to put the candle up to your face. And so if you're using either the 2x Eco 10s, 2x Eco 6, or the 1 CD26, all 3 of those were just, I loved them. So in these tins, I have had the most success that I have out of the jar. Okay, so that's my update using the Freedom Wax with the various tins that we started a couple weeks ago and the various vessels. And you can see by my varying results all over the board and the different wicks and the different things I've done with re-wicking them and trying different wicks that it's a process. And it's really hard not to get frustrated because I just want to launch. I just want to go with stuff. And I can launch my tins and I can launch my tarts. My tarts have been doing wonderfully as well, but I don't have a full line yet. So I haven't really done a store opening, but I have just kind of started selling to family and friends and trying to get my name out there. Little bummed that I'm not going to make the Christmas this year, but there's always Mardi Gras, St. Patrick's Day, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, so on and so forth. So I'm trying to just work on perfecting the other ones. But American Freedom Wax, test it, try those different wicks. I have found that the CDN series and the Eco Wicks are the absolute best. So that's what I have for you today. If you enjoyed kind of hearing a little bit about the Freedom Wax, if you're using it, love to hear your results, questions, comments, thoughts, anything you're struggling with that maybe other people are too and we can talk about. Don't forget to click on that little subscribe button, become part of my channel. And what can we have for this week? This week, I want you to... I struggled the entire month of October with trying to juggle and manage my time and family and life and wicks and testing and wicks. I want you to do something wonderful for yourself this week. Something just for you. Take a long hot bath with a glass of tea or bubbly, or sit down and lock the door and read a book, or go out to lunch with a friend, or go for a long nature walk. Something that you've probably not gotten to do for a while, but really love to do. And all of us tend to put everything and everybody else first and forget about ourselves. I want you this week to do something for you. So that's what I have for you. Don't forget to live your life out loud. Let me know how this week went. Follow me on Insta, and I will see you soon. Bye.